Hi, my name is Johanni and I come from Finland in Northern Europe. I am an adult educator and I'm also a lifelong learner. I've been working with lifelong learning and I've been working as an adult educator actively since 1997. Then, what is adult education? What does it mean when we talk about adult learning? My mother tongue is Swedish, and there is a saying in my mother tongue, a beloved child has many names. That means, in terms of adult education, that depending on what part of the world you live in, your culture, your background, your context, and the history and tradition where you come from will most likely affect your view on what adult education is, maybe what it should be, and also possibly what it should not be and what it cannot be. The Nordic countries, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Iceland, share to some extent a common history. One of the things which has developed in a similar fashion in most of our countries is adult education stemming from a liberal adult education point of view. That is to say, a little over 100 years ago, adult education was a tool for people from the working classes and people living in rural areas. At the time, all our countries where I come from were completely predominantly rural and also very poor, saw education, learning, as a way to rise up above the current status and situation, to improve life, to improve the possibility of living a better life. And that, of course, has affected the way I see and learn and know about adult education. I come from a tradition that puts or claims to put the learner at the center, first and foremost. We have a wide variety of actors, for example in Finland, who offers adult education on a liberal or non-formal basis. That means in practice that people attend classes or enroll in courses or sign up for training voluntarily because they want to do something, learn something, improve something, and for some also possibly for reasons of having a social context to be in and to be part of. So, coming from that background, you might think adult education equals empowerment, the feeling that persons enroll out of their own interest and because it is something they want to improve or feel that they need to be part of. I am quite aware that in many parts of the world adult education is very different. For some, it's about the possibility to learn to read and write. And when I say a beloved child has many names, what I mean is also that all of that is adult education or adult learning. You may use it and you may think of it as a way for people to have a nicer life, have a better life, or have a life. And I subscribe to the idea that it is smarter to be more inclusive in this process and allow for the richness of adult education to have these many forms, rather than to specify and say adult education can only take place in a classroom with a teacher and a curriculum with the stated goal of achieving the following 3 objectives. Equally wrong would be to say adult education can only be done on a voluntary basis by people who feel the need or interest or motivation to improve themselves for whatever reasons they may have. Even in a small country like Finland, we are not in agreement what adult education as such means. And how could we be? Because also in a country like Finland, there are many different actors and providers and adult educators. And even within the narrower sector of liberal or non-formal adult education, you see there is a difference between different schools of thought, different traditions, partly different didactics, and different understandings about the means by which adult education can be used to reach specific targets or objectives. And if we are able to embrace that richness, acknowledging that while it is to some extent partly contradictory, it also includes a strength, and that's a strength in diversity. If we can agree that adult education can have many shapes, take many forms, and be done for different reasons, while still always keeping in focus what I started by saying, which is the learner is in the center, it is not really that important for a learner what the rationale or the reasons are for a provider, a teacher, a school, or a government to offer adult education or learning opportunities. What matters is that the learner should be the end result, the thing everything is done for. If you think of education as a tool, an instrument to reach specific goals like increasing social capital or working on social inclusion and social cohesion, you run the risk of narrowing it down to become only a tool, and you're missing, quite possibly, some of the very richer, extensive benefits that may come from the fact that it includes and can include so much more. I see that there are lots of strife between educational institutions, educational thinkers, and those who talk in favor of education between themselves. I think that kind of strife is futile, because in the end we should all be focusing on trying to accomplish the same goal, which is to help people wherever they are, whatever level they are, to get where they need to be that a professional skill, a personal skill, a development in their life situation, or something which is a combination of all those things together. And so, while it would be very nice to be able to outline a perfect adult educator or an education system or policy, such as many people are coming to my home country, Finland, to look for answers, to say, you seem to have such a good educational system. What is the secret? Can we just copy-paste that into our own setting so that we can accomplish the same things or have the same kind of system that you have in Finland? It would be very nice to be able to provide a blueprint for that. I am one of those who thinks it doesn't work that way. It isn't really that straightforward or that simple. The goal, the shared ambition, where we want to be, why we should work within education, is something we might be able to discuss and agree on. But the challenge is, how do we get there? And then we are, of course, dependent on understandings and policies in a regional, national, and global context. Funding to some extent, but also the culture and the context into which this educational provision should be improved, developed, or put in place. When I work as an adult educator, I very seldom think that I am the one with all the answers. My way of looking at lifelong learning and continuous learning, and my way of looking at life and myself as a learner, is that rather than providing the definite answers, it's more about asking the good questions. It's more about reflecting about why do we think like we do? What are the motives behind the way we do things? And what may be the consequences if we go in this direction or that direction? So not only do I think that we have no shortcuts to an educational system that caters to many different sorts of needs, I also think there are very few absolute truths that can be put forward in a training such as Curriculum Globale. But what I hope we can accomplish together is a setting by which we can talk about it, reflect, ask the difficult and tricky questions of each other's, but also of ourselves. What are my limitations? What am I not seeing? When I started, I didn't know very much about education in other parts of the world, and I came with a predefined idea in my head, I think, that we have a very good system in Finland, and I was proud that people were coming to look for the way we do things in my country. And yes, I think there is still reasons to be proud if you have a system that works. But that's not the same as saying we have the answers or it's completed and done. If you are serious about the idea of lifelong learning and or continuous learning, you will acknowledge the fact that we are never there. You're never completed. You're never finished. You always have to think about and reflect on what are the next steps, what can be done better, what needs to be improved, and what needs to be changed.